It started with scratching sounds coming from within the walls and a child's bed shaking violently. Before anyone knew what was happening, a young child was possessed by an evil entity who loved to taunt and be violent to anyone who got in its way, including writing on the child's skin from within. But I'm not talking about Regan, the 12-year-old girl from the movie The Exorcist. No, I'm talking about a 14-year-old boy who literally went to hell and back, inspiring a book and one of the greatest horror movies of all time. The Exorcist was so disturbing to many people that it was even banned in certain areas around the world, and those cinemas that chose to screen it would offer sick bags, just in case audience members were overcome by the need to vomit. But the most horrific part to this story is that it is actually based on real-life events, which were more brutal and terrifying than the movie. Today we will dissect the real Exorcist tale. Ronald Edwin Hunkler was born in 1935, and being an only child, he was very close to his Aunt Harriet, who was a practicing spiritualist. They loved to hang out and often would play with a Ouija board together. But it seems that messing around with the paranormal was not a wise thing to do, as in the late 1940s, strange activity started to happen around his house. It began with a dripping, rapping and scratching sound which seemed to come from inside the walls, but nothing could be found to explain the noise. To make matters worse, a picture of Jesus that hung in the family home began to shake for no reason at all. Now I'm sure you can imagine how unsettling this must have been for the family, especially as they couldn't find the source for the strange goings on. Then, 11 days after these weird occurrences started, disaster struck and his beloved aunt tragically died. This hurled Ronald into the path of evil entities. You see, in his heartbroken state, he became more vulnerable than ever to the spirit that was already stalking him from within his home. In desperate need to speak with his aunt, he decided to use the Ouija board, a decision he would soon regret, as without his knowledge, that entity crept inside his body. The scratching noise intensified as it seemed to engulf his bedroom, and water began dripping from pipes and down his walls. Sleep was no longer an option either, weakening his body and mind, as when he tried to rest, his bed would move as well as furniture. There seemed to be no escape from the torments, as no matter where Ronald went, strange events would unfold like objects levitating. His family were going out of their mind with worry, especially when scratches started to appear on his body. But no medical or psychiatric help altered his erratic behaviour, leaving his parents wondering what their next move should be. Reverend Luther Miles Schultz invited young Ronald to stay the night at his home so that he could observe the strange behaviour himself. What he witnessed was beyond terrifying, as the religious man saw the armchair Ronald had been sitting in start to tilt and tip with no human intervention, as well as other items in the Reverend's home starting to move. He announced that he truly believed the forces of evil were at play and that an exorcism would be the way forward. Now, can you imagine being told that your loved one is not suffering from a mental illness, which is upsetting enough, but that they're possessed? You would totally lose your shit, right? The Lutheran Church tried to help, but were at a loss as to what they could do. So, the Catholic Church stepped up, and a Father Hughes asked permission to perform an exorcism in late February 1949. During the exhausting hours spent praying and trying to expel the entity, Ronald managed to escape his restraints and broke off one of his bed springs, attacking the priest. It was so savage that the poor man was deeply cut across his shoulders, needing stitches, which meant the exorcism had to halt. Only a few days after this attack, deep welts started to appear on the boy's body, spelling out the words Louis. The family had no idea what this meant, but trying to make some sense of it, decided it must mean that they should move to St. Louis, which they did. Here they found their new home at 8435 Roanoke Drive. Through a close family member, the family obtained help from two priests, one being Father Walter Halloran, a college professor, and Reverend William Bowden, an associate of the college church. They wanted to help this poor boy as much as they could, and after several discussions, an exorcism was approved. Again. Not long after starting though, welts started to suddenly appear from inside Ronald's body, etching the words evil and hell. He also became so violent, he attacked one of the priests, breaking his nose. This exorcism was proving too much for those trying to help. The level of violence, the brutal abuse to the young boy's body and mind was something no person should have to endure, or witness. In early March of 1949, more experts gathered at Roanoke Drive, wanting to witness for themselves the intensity of the possession, and were left horrified. Ronald started to speak in a deep, guttural voice and appeared to slip into trance-like states, while objects flew around the room. Furniture shook, and his mattress moved violently from side to side. It was during this period, though, a pattern was noticed. You see, Ronald appeared almost normal in the day, with those around him noting how peaceful he seemed. But this was just the calm before the storm. As darkness fell, he would start to scream and become violent, especially when being faced with religious items. Now, as you might have noticed, lots of these occurrences were featured in the movie, but not everything was. An X appeared on the boy's torso, which the priests believed signified there were 10 demons inside Ronald's body. On another day, a pitchfork shape of deep red welts moved from his thigh and snaked down to his ankle. This is just a couple of incidents, but this happened every single night for more than a month. So you can only imagine the toll it was taking on his family. But this poor boy was being tortured mentally and physically day after day. And by March 20th, things escalated to breaking point. Ronald began to urinate all over the bedsheets and scream profanities to those in the room. It seemed nothing was ever going to work. Would this be the rest of Ronald's life? His parents decided to send him to Alexian Brothers Hospital, and it is here that many believe a miracle occurred. It was said to be the Monday after Easter when Ronald started to have severe seizures and screamed at the priests that Satan would always be with him. Panicked by this sudden turn of events, they laid holy relics, rosaries and crucifixes on his body. By 10:45 p.m, after a full day of brutal events taking place, one of the priests pleaded with St. Michael to rid the boy's body of Satan, to fight for his soul. After about 7 minutes, the exhausted child awoke from his trance-like state and simply announced to the room, "He's gone." When he had settled down, he told his family that while he was in his trance-like state, he witnessed St. Michael vanquishing Satan on a battlefield. Maybe it was true, or could it have been the power of suggestion that made him see this vision? What do you guys believe? Let me know in the comments below. It is said that Ronald went back to being a regular kid with no more strange occurrences happening within the household. I honestly think that no amount of therapy would heal the emotional scars of this family, though. To endure such horrors for an extended period of time chips away at you. Whatever possessed that young boy, whether the devil or an evil spirit, I would struggle to remain living in the home it all took place in. That kind of event leaves a mark, like a stain on the property, just like it does with those that go through it.